2, 1. We are live. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is June 12th, 2024. Lots to talk about this morning. Things were fairly quiet the last time we had met, and now we've sort of, you could technically say we have kind of exponentially multiplied the action on the game board. Let's put it that way. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for taking some time your morning to join us here on the Weather Center at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday. We're looking kind of tropical outside here in the state of Florida. Large amounts of rainfall have affected the southern one-third of the peninsula, just as we had discussed on Monday and previous live streams from that point back in time. Our National Hurricane Center homepage is what we're going to be getting started with this morning. We haven't done this in a long time, to tell you the truth. I haven't started with the National Hurricane Center homepage since one of my last tropical updates for the 2023 hurricane season. We now not only have one area of influence or area of investigation classified as Invest 90L according to the National Hurricane Center, but we're picking up this puppy right here, and I think this is going to officially be our first named storm of the season. We'll have to watch this. There's still some fair agreement that this could try to become a little bit more consolidated, maybe a tropical depression. We still have a very small window before it gets entrenched into that frontal line, the trough that's coming across the Great Lakes, the Northeast, and picks it up and moves it well up into Atlantic Canada. But there is going to be a marginal window of time over the next 48 hours for it to try to do something as it moves up towards the north, gets out of our subtropical wind shear, and before it interacts with that polar front jet, we might see something come together. I'm not putting a huge vote of confidence in that. For me, it's going to be the BOC, the Bay of Campeche. That's going to be the one I really do think at this point. And I have not had a confident moment like this since the hurricane season started, and even before the hurricane season, to where I can say I'm fairly certain this guy right here is going to be Alberto. That's going to be it. The fortunate/unfortunate, fortunate for our folks out there across the Gulf Coast, unfortunate for our folks along the lee of the mountains out there in Mexico, it is going to crash and burn into Mexico. That's really not going to do very much. Some of our ensembles have tried to get this thing to make a run for the Texas-Louisiana coast. I really don't think that's going to happen. We're going to have way too much ridging that's going to back build in. There's also something very interesting right in through here that just suddenly popped up on our overnight European model. The European model suddenly got a knip shit and was like, you know what, we're gonna, and I didn't cuss, that's an actual word, YouTube don't flag me for that, but something went up the Euros, you know what, and it's all of a sudden like, yep, tropical development, probabilities are going up, ensembles are in full agreement, let's do this, let's get this hurricane season rocking and rolling, and I'll take you through it for sure. PM, I'm going to disagree. There's definitely, I really think that there's going to be something down here. I really do. And it's going to be a very difficult time arguing against it. And I'll take you guys through it here in a moment. We also have a little bit of an indication that something could try to manifest itself out here in the Eastern Pacific. This, truthfully, however, I think is what's going to be bleeding up and over into the Bay of Campeche. I think that's what's going to happen here. We have our huge gyre, our anticyclone that's providing us with that really good upward vertical motion, the lowering pressures, that convective instability to get the thunderstorms and the moisture going. We have those small pockets of vorticity that are just going to be wrapped up in that anticyclone that everybody still past Monday wants to say I was hyping. If we get a storm out of this, I'm coming for each of those individuals, just letting you know right out of the gate. But, this is the one I'm truthfully thinking is going to do it, guys. I really do think so. My confidence, I would say we're at about a 50% shot, in my opinion. I know that we have a 0 and 20 for the next 7 days right now per the National Hurricane Center. I can definitely foresee this going up. I, here in the Weather Center, based off of everything that we've been looking at for a cumulative window of time, I'm at about a 50% chance we're going to have development out of that over the next 7 days. So I'd go ahead and mark it orange internally here. Let's go ahead and say good morning to a few folks. Storm 962, Richard Perez. Who else do we have in the chat today? I know I've seen a few other names. Nomad Avenue 6, PM. Tommy, Mick, and Marley, thank you kindly for joining us today. Let's see who else. I'm seeing a few other folks popping up. Eyewall Addict, thank you kindly for joining us in. April, I'm not sure about everyone else, but loving the rain here in southern Hillsborough County. Oh yeah, I'm definitely enjoying the rain. I finally turned my sprinklers off, and I'm hoping that the lawn can come back into fruition just a little bit more than we have been for a long time out here since that first heat wave. Alex Baller 75, indeed, I have that tab pulled up, and we'll be getting into that here in a moment. Valerie Smith, Twilight Firefly 100, TG Herman, good morning to you guys. Let's see, who else do we have joining us in? Kevin from Tampa Bay, Dawn Martinez, good morning to you. TG Herman, I think I may have repeated myself, but regardless, good morning. And Zuriel, right on cue to come on in and mention how we're going to lie about everything. So let's get started. So from the jump start, we have a number of different areas that we want to watch. Like I said, over the last 24 hours, it seems as if all of our models have finally woken up to the MJO propagation, and it kind of makes sense. We were a little bit on the latent side. I know for a long time we've been advertising on this channel that we could start to see some more favorability increasing across the board by about June 10th. Now, it is June 12th, so we are very subtly behind the board, but I would say our forecast is verifying fairly well. If it weren't for this deep trough axis over the eastern United States, Florida would have definitely saw their first landfall of the season. I'm not going to back down from that. We had a nice little low pressure center that formed off the southwest coast of Tampa Bay area yesterday, and it was spinning for an extended period of time, and now it is finally overtopped the state, helping to kind of bring up our winds. I noticed there were a little bit of elevated winds this morning, some sustained winds out there when I went to the gym of about 15, 20 miles an hour. Obviously, nothing really worth writing home about, just kind of taking a statistical surface observation in the parking lot of the Crunch Kissimmee, or the Crunch Point Sienna. This area here is already starting to tap into some of our convective juice out there. You can see our energy already wandering in, trying to get its act together from that Central American gyre, the large anticyclone that's overhead this general geographic point over Central America, southeastern Mexico. What I really want us to pay close attention to, there goes Willow making her candid entrance. She's going to come sit down on my lap. What I really want us to pay close attention to, though, even though I'm fairly convinced we're going to see something manifest itself in the Bay of Campeche, there's two areas that are really on my radar all of a sudden. Down here, even though there's nothing there on the immediate horizon, hear me out, and I'll show you here in a moment. And also these guys that are slowly but surely becoming a little bit more enhanced as they come off of Africa. I'll go ahead and switch my head to the other side of the screen so you guys can get a better look. Out here in the MDR along that wave train, we're starting to see that it does not appear that our Saharan dust is doing a heck of a lot. We do have Saharan dust out there. You can still kind of trace it in, and I'll go ahead and shade it in with a bit of a brown shade here. There's your dust. You can very well see it coming off of West Africa. It's right in between most of our more prevalent features out there in the Atlantic. You can see some kind of an upper level spin out here. This could be a Tutlow. Does not look like anything tropical. To the immediate west of the Africa shoreline, kind of just southwest of Portugal and Spain. Portugal and Spain are right up there, so that's fairly high latitude at about 20 degrees latitude. We have this very robust tropical wave down there in the MDR, and that thing is looking very healthy. The only problem is we just don't have our upper-level climatological features, or I guess you could say our upper-level ingredients favorable enough to get these things going. But that is a really good-looking tropical wave. In fact, if it were August, September timeframe, even late July, I would definitely say that bad boy is going to continue to wander to the west, and the Lesser Antilles are going to have to watch. Regardless, as that thing comes across, we're going to see ebbing and flowing in our convective activity with this. But I don't really foresee development. However, there are signals that our main development region will try to turn on here very soon. Let's get a closer look at our invest area. So I'm a little astonished that they made this a 90L invest, to tell you the truth, because yesterday it was looking very lackluster. Right now on this static infrared look, if you see, you can't really discern any sort of a tropical feature. It looks almost like a frontal boundary coming across the state of Florida, with all of our heaviest rainfall still down towards the south. We've had large amounts of training rainfall coming on the west coast for Sarasota, Fort Myers, Punta Gorda, Hillsborough County. As we mentioned, we're seeing some on and off rain showers in that general area. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, the Keys, they saw a lot of rainfall action yesterday. Sarasota set a record for the largest amount of rainfall that they could accumulate within, I believe, the hour time frame or something like that. So very impressive. Here's an actual look at our tropical invest area. Our center of circulation is well displaced to the west. This is a looping image. You can see the low center right there, and there goes the image updating, unfortunately. There's our low center right here that is very, very heavily displaced from our thunderstorm activity. This just goes to show how nasty that shear really is. And it's taken a pretty large track, pretty hefty track towards the north. It's kind of wandering through the likes of, I want to say that's Sumter and Orange County, pushing towards Seminole County, according to what the satellite is showing us. So technically speaking, technically speaking, and this is a big technical, please don't take this as I'm lying to you guys. Technically, since this is a tropical low pressure, technically since it was classified as an invest area, technically since National Hurricane Center has eyes on it, Tampa Bay was officially hit by a tropical feature. We've officially broken that spell. I know obviously it doesn't count. It's not a named storm. It's not this and that, but it was designated. It is tropical in nature, and we have a low pressure spin that is very evident on the satellite imagery. So technically one could make a very, very low end argument that Tampa has officially saw its first low pressure moving right into the Tampa Bay area over the last 100 years. Could it be a sign of what's to come? Maybe. I'm not really going to try to jinx it or manifest any kind of weird theories behind it, but very interesting to note that we had that low pressure right there on the satellite image, albeit very sheared, almost looking like Arlene from last year in 2023, make its way right into the Tampa, Clearwater, St. Petersburg area. So, cool stuff. Very good stuff. Here's our rainfall probabilities for the next couple of days. This is day one. As we go through the day today, June 12th and into the June 13th timeframe, you can see that a large quantity of the rainfall is going to continue to stay down in the southern half of the peninsula. And you can really see it when we up our probabilities just a little bit more to the above an inch percentile. You can see that literally the bottom half of the state is going to be... Thank you for sitting on my hand. The bottom half of the state is going to be inundated by this rainfall, and it is going to stay that way, at least for the foreseeable future, until something else tries to develop and move up towards the north, right up into the Gulf Coast line. Not organized, not named, nothing that should be identified by the National Hurricane Center, just another surge of rainfall from down to the south. Here's a quick glance before we get into some of the model data of some of the rain totals we saw yesterday. Collier County saw upwards of 9, almost 10 inches of rainfall. Miami-Dade County topping out at just under 7 inches. Palm Beach County 3.5 or 3 1/3. Let's see what else we have on the spectrum here. General takeaway, though, has been about that 2 to 4, 3 to 6 inch kind of margin. So again, the forecasts are verifying, okay, we did pretty good with this. We had identified that southwest Florida, southern Florida was going to be hit the hardest by our precip activity, and there you go. We can see it plain as day. Let me go ahead and adjust my blinds real quick because that sun is coming in something fierce. There we go. Let me move my cameras, get the sun glare out of the way. There we go. Much better. All right. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting. So, this chart looks very, very odd. We've never pulled this up before. Alex sent this to me on X, a very nice picture. Very nice little identifier for using all of our EPS ensembles. Here's the first one. That's our invest area. Large, good amount of agreement that some kind of a low-pressure spin is going to continue to develop as it moves up the eastern seaboard, not playing a role in anybody's weather for that matter until it gets up into Atlantic Canada. There's your Bay of Campeche that looks really, really impressive. I want to say we almost have 80 to 90% of our ensemble members of the European model highlighting development down there. That's how confident we are. We have not seen that yet this hurricane season, to where all the spaghetti plots from one singular model, let alone King Euro, as a number of individuals like to call it, are identifying that that is going to be our sweet spot right there. That's why internally confidence is going up. Run to run, all of our models are singing in tune that a low pressure is going to form. Every single one of them, we haven't missed a beat. The European model, the Euro AI model, the GFS, even the Icon, the Canadian, the NavGem, you name it. You can put any model on the table. Even the Korean model and the UK model are highlighting tropical development down there. So now it's a matter of when we start to see things manifest itself. It would take such a huge shift in a number of different parameters from all levels of the environment to get that to shut down. What I really want us to pay attention to, though, is this very erroneous piece of energy that our European model is zeroing in on. The Icon has it, the GFS is a little wishy-washy with it, but I'll show you that here in a second. And if you look, our MDR probabilities are slowly but surely starting to pick up. And with a dominating high-pressure ridge out there across the central and eastern Atlantic, these things are going to push towards the west, which is why I've said time and time again for my viewers out there in the Lesser Antilles, front lines, baby, front lines. You guys are going to be taking the brunt of a lot of that action that comes out of the main development region, and it looks like we're slowly but surely starting to see activity spur up. It's very spur-risk activity, nothing very organized or concentrated, but it's there. And if we switch on over to the probabilities, we're looking at the entire Atlantic AOY now because we can zoom out that far and investigate small incidental pieces of probabilities. In the next 72 hours, you can see the Euro is trying to elevate our chances for some sort of tropical development. Now, this is definitely going to be another situation where timing is key, because as our low continues to move up, not only are we wandering into the somewhat cooler waters of the western, northwestern Atlantic. If you remember, everybody and their mother this early hurricane season and before the hurricane season was talking horseshoe, 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 bad hurricane season because of the horseshoe, shoe at a horse, horse at a shoe, shoes with horses and all that. So, and we also have frontal activity and polar front jet support that's coming in out of the North American continent. So it's a race against time for this thing to try to manifest itself into something more than an elongated, ragged out looking low pressure center that is currently on satellite image right now. If you take it just a little bit further in time to 96 and 120 hours, look at how everything is really cranking up for the Bay of Campeche in the Eastern Pacific. We're going to see some crossover activity, very similar to what we saw with Idalia last year. This is almost a textbook iteration of what occurred with Idalia last year. Only difference is this is the opposite scenario. I remember when I first started to report to you guys, I had mentioned that it's very back and forth with where Idalia forms. It's either going to be in the Western Caribbean or it's going to be the Bay of Campeche. The Idalia's case, it was the Western Caribbean and came up towards Florida. In this case, we're getting the opposite end of that. We're looking at something trying to pull to the north and moving towards the Bay of Campeche, and it's going to crash and burn into Mexico. Might try to make a run. Shout out to Devil Charger out there. Might try to make a run towards the Corpus Christi area. Corpus Christi. I got tongue-tied on... Wow, there he is again right there. I got tongue-tied on Monday when I was briefing. Some ensemble members want to jog this just a hair towards the north. I really think the general consensus is this thing is going to move right into Mexico as our upper ridge begins to manifest itself very powerfully, I guess you could say, over the southeast United States, the Caribbean, and this is also what could help to expedite a little bit of additional development. And then on top of that, if you go just a little bit further into the run, notice what's suddenly popping up out there over the Bahamas. So this is definitely, this here I'm a little up in the air about. I'm very curious to know exactly what's happening there. And now, don't get me wrong, I can understand and see what the models are trying to riddle to us, but I just think this kind of snuck in out of left field. If you guys remember, for my viewers who are watching Monday night, we talked about the Korean model. I saw a couple of folks in the chat even say, the Korean model? What are you talking about, the Korean model? The Korean model, the UK model, all had some weird conglomeration of a storm moving up towards the northeast, wrapping back around and coming at us from the west. So it's very interesting that all of a sudden our probabilities are picking up on that, and then obviously you go towards the very tail end of the run and you can see that not only are we getting an additional signal down there in the Southern Caribbean, but also out there in the main development region. And again, for my viewers out there in the Lesser Antilles, even for Puerto Rico, Kevin, I'm not too sure if I've seen you in the chat just yet, buddy. I hope you're okay. Definitely want to start watching out there. This is also a big shout out to my tia Elba out there in Puerto Rico. I'm going to have to private message her after this that it's probably the point in the hurricane season where now we really need to open the second eye and start watching, because we're starting to see some trends that just don't look very good. This is 10 degrees northern latitude, and you can see that those probabilities are favoring staying either to the immediate south of 10 degrees northern latitude or right along that line. And as we all know, it's a proven track record. These puppies, they tend to try to lift to the north a little bit too late to escape running into the Eastern Caribbean or greater or Lesser Antilles for that matter. If you come over to our ensembles for Zero Zulu, first and foremost, you see that gratuitous agreement for our system up over the north. There goes all of our splattered spaghetti out there in the Bay of Campeche, and you can see a huge amount of agreement. A little bit of an expansive point. It's not entirely converged. They're just a cluster of almost spider-webbing spaghetti models. But the key takeaway here is whatever comes up out of the Eastern Pacific is going to move in this general direction. I'll even change the ink so you guys can get a better idea. Manifestation down there in the east pack of our mid-level vorticity, and then it's going to wander up like this. Could try to bring some influence to the weather activity in extreme southernmost Texas. Maybe try to skirt the border of Texas depending on how late it decides to organize and consolidate. But that's going to be the general trend here. And then I want you to pay close attention not only to the MDR. I'm going to move my head out of the way one more time. There we go. looking at the MDR, and then I also want you guys to look at the Bahamas. Now, there aren't too many ensemble members there, but there's a couple of them. And then, as you can see, starting to get a couple of plots out there in the MDR, one that crosses right over top Puerto Rico as a tropical storm. And again, we're not trying to emphasize that it's time, something's coming, but the fact of the matter is, for the first time in this hurricane season, even though it was only the 12th of June, with all the waves that have been coming off of Africa already, I think we're already at about like 7 or 8 waves, maybe a little bit less than that, I'm not sure, but there's been a number of decently amplified waves that have come off of Africa with our African easterly jet, and now the Euro itself is picking up on those very weak signals. The GFS shows much of the same, and I'll show you that here in a moment. This is where it gets a little more interesting. So first and foremost, there goes our first guy off the chart, disappears. There goes the Bay of Campeche, huge signal, enormous signal on the Euro. This is our 0Z Euro that something's going to develop, really get itself together, and then boom, right into eastern Mexico, washes itself out. Big flood potential for the folks living on the lee, or even the windward side of the the mountain chain out there. So all sorts of agreement. You can't really argue with it. You go back to 12 Zulu, there it is. You go back to 0Z, there it is. You go back to 12Z. You go all the way out towards the back end of the model run again. This is the Euro, guys. Again, I got to emphasize that this is the European model. There it is again. This is the 10th at 12 Zulu. You go back to the 10th at 0Z. There it is again. You go back to the 9th. There it is again. Whenever it loads, there she goes. So great run-to-run consistency. That's the convergence. There it is right there at the end of the model run on the 9th at 12Z. So we've already gotten 3 days of European agreement back to back to back to back to back. Very good consistency, very good convergence across all data spectrums. Not only is the location, not only is the timing, not only is the intensity, not only is the rate of intensity, but the overall structuring of the storm is very well put together. The Euro is screaming quality run-to-run consistency. So, like I said, I definitely think that there's something that's going to develop down there, and we'll have to wait and see. But let's go back to 12 at 0Z, because take a look at this. Watch up there in Florida. All of a sudden, some sneaky wave in the pattern. It looks like there's some frontal energy that's here, with a mixture of our frontal activity that's up over here, and I'm going to switch the color so you guys can see in a second, but right there, something sneaking on the east coast of Florida. Very, very interesting. And if you switch over to our 850 vorticity, you'll see it even more plain as day. So there goes our first feature out there. You got some leftover remnant vorticity right here. And as that anticyclone in the upper levels and our wind shear goes down a little bit, watch that. Right there. Sneaky little wave in the pattern. So I don't know. This is the first time that this has appeared on the Euro model run. So very interesting. Is this going to increase our rain chances, or does this have a potential of possibly trying to do something a little bit further that's not on anybody's radar? And I know that it's not the safest bet to start to scrutinize things like that, but I mean, if you look, we have a pretty solid spot to where our shear can weaken down just a little bit. That's where our hottest waters are, too. That's where the indeed hottest water temps are across the Atlantic basin. We have our greatest concentration of heat right up in through that general area. If we switch over to the Western Atlantic and turn this on, take a look at that. So right in through there, we definitely have enough ingredients, enough energy. Let me switch the color of the ink because obviously not going to be able to see it. We're definitely in agreement that, you know, definitely hot enough to support tropical cyclogenesis. So, and then obviously down here in the Bay of Campeche, the eastern Pacific there, plenty of active ingredients, not only in ocean heat, but sea surface temps. But this area here is definitely looking a little bit more on the favorable side. So, not going to give it a whole lot of attention because, no, in our luck, as soon as we do give it a lot of attention, it's going to disappear. So, but worth mentioning that for some strange reason, the 0Z European model is getting a little friendly with something wandering through the pattern and trying to organize as it scrapes up the eastern seaboard of Florida, the east coast of Florida, trying to make a run for Georgia. I took a little bit of a closer shot so we can take a look at it, with Florida being the main AOI here, and right there is where it comes in. There you go, right there. So it looks like there's a little bit of maybe just a very pronounced tropical wave that comes in along the west coast, something trying to get itself together, has nice cyclonic curvature, good confluence on the back side of it, good difluence on the front side of it, but doesn't quite consolidate into that full cyclonic view. So could be a tropical perturbation, a tropical wave, a weak tropical disturbance that's trying to get itself together. What else can I show you here to more or less make sense of that and show you guys? Let's see. We might be a little too zoomed in to look at it up close and personal. But anyways, you get the big picture. Something interesting in the pattern that just showed up. A little bit of ensemble member agreement for it. Kind of wanders in off the tail end of a front here, and then the tailing end of the front there. So two different frontal pieces that are going to leave energy over those hot waters. Upper level flow is going to get a little bit more favorable if you switch over to our 300 millibar winds and you take a look at the pattern. That trough shoots out of there, and then there you go. You get a little bit of an anticyclone all through that area. So I don't know. It's definitely worth watching. We have decent upper level flow. The MJO is in position. So now it's just a matter of, are we going to play the game of giving it a little bit more energy from the models, or are we not going to? And the only reason I'm really bringing it up is the fact that it's not a GFS. It's not a GFS. It's not a Canadian model. It's the European model. So it's definitely worth talking about. And I know people won't come at me and say, oh, you're putting too much attention into it. You're hyping because it's the Euro. If I were looking at 300 plus hours in the GFS, I wouldn't even be mentioning it. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Here is the control ensemble, the control member of the 0Z European model. Control member just in as much of agreement as our operational models have been depicting right there. You can see low pressure beginning to consolidate, and then it crashes right into Mexico and disappears. If you look right around that same time, though, look at that. There's our wave. So even the control member of the European model is picking up something. You can track that through, and it crosses the state of Florida, and even though it's very weak, it's right there. Passes up through the Bahamas. That's a little bit too far south of a line. Passes up through the Bahamas, comes across like that, and then parks itself right there off the Florida Panhandle. So we'll have to wait and see if this trends. I'm not really thinking we're going to get a heck of a lot out of it. It's nothing to write home about. It's not going to be a sneaky tropical storm or anything. Maybe it could be. Who knows? We're very early in our model depictions. There's only been a little bit of model ensemble agreement with that. And we've only got one run of the European model. And yeah, I know that. That's why, again, this is why, I'm going to go on, I promise, a 60-second tirade. This is why, even though it feels silly from my perspective, I need to say things to you guys to avoid communicating the wrong message, even though I know I'm not communicating it wrong, even though I know and I understand what it is I'm trying to explain. Again, I got to go over to basics. I got to paint it out for everybody, and I promise this doesn't come from a negative standpoint. I just want everyone to understand what it is I'm saying. No, I'm not saying Euro is putting a tropical storm. No, I'm not saying Florida is getting a landfall. No, I'm not predicting another named storm. No, I'm not forecasting the National Hurricane Center is going to say something. No, I'm not saying the Euro is perfect, positive, onto something. I'm not saying any of those. All I'm showing you guys is there's something new on the radar that comes towards a populated area, and it's very interesting that of all models it decides to show itself on, it's what a large majority of the weather population would consider the best. My favorite catchphrase, if it ain't on a Euro, it ain't happening. Well, it's on the Euro, so that's the only reason I'm bringing it up. Yes, I know it can be wrong. Yes, I know no model is perfect, but it's worth talking about. It's the hurricane season. We're going to talk about it. Here is our GFS ensembles for 0Z. The GFS does not get as cozy with that low pressure off the east coastline of the United States, the mid-Atlantic coast, as the European model does. But the GFS is in very, very solid agreement that we're going to get something to manifest itself, whether it be in the Southern Caribbean or off the East Pac, that's going to wander into the Bay of Campeche and then crash right into Mexico. A couple of ensemble members bring something strong up towards Louisiana or Texas. So there's going to be a little bit of wiggling and wobbling, but I'm very confident in saying that if something does show itself, because of the upper level ridging that's going to be in place from the mid to upper levels of the environment, all that steering flow is just going to knock it straight into Mexico. Could get a little bit of enhanced activity. And when I say that, I mean just rainfall, a little bit of elevated winds for southern Texas. Nothing to write home about or cause any sort of a panic. And then even on the GFS, you can see a couple of ensemble members sneaking in under the radar from out of the MDR. Whoops. Right here, a couple of those bad boys. coming in to range where we can see them. In fact, let's take a look at 6 Zulu. I don't really like to pay attention to 6 and 18, but we'll take a look at it anyways to see if we're mimicking certain things. So, yep, GFS still in line with what's going to happen out of the Caribbean, and we've lost our MDR signal and brought back something that could possibly make a run for the the Gulf of Mexico coastline, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida. Not paying attention to that because it's the 6Z. Here's a look at our ensembles from the GFS, our individual models, and you can see every single model member at this point. Actually, every single one of them, minus it looks like member 22 and 20, has something developing. Oh, and 5. So we have 3 of the ensemble members here, the 30 perturbed members, picking up on that BOC development. So it's happening. It's definitely happening. And I'm not saying it's definitely happening like we're going to get Alberto. I'm saying something's going to be down there. Our models did an excellent job highlighting this. It was a little back and forth in terms of whether or not we'd get low consolidation or an actual just wave of precip. We're riding it out as we speak, so it's worth mentioning that our ensembles are really picking up what we're putting down, and then the GFS, trying to see if it has anything trying to organize out there near the Bahamas at all. It doesn't look like it. Maybe a couple of individual members swinging it off the coast, keeping it off the coast. I don't really see too much. I have the Korean model pulled up anyways, just for the fun of it, just to have a little bit more evidence on the table. If you look down there in the Bay of Campeche, there it is. And really excellent consistency in terms of what our other model members are thinking. Korean model forming it up at the same general time and then pushing it westward into Mexico before it disappears. If we were to pull up the UK model as well and take a look at the UK just to further solidify what it is we're looking at, we'll look at our 850 millibar level at the 0Z model run. There goes our first system. There goes this. Oh, hey, look at that. So the UK model actually does have something developing along that frontal band and pushing back towards Florida. Right there. So the UK model is also seeing a little bit of what the European model is picking up on. Large gyre. Huge gyre activity in the mid-levels. This is 850. Unfortunately, on the UK Met, we can't look at the surface winds. But, again, excellent run-to-run consistency. You look at the time frame, the 16th into the 17th of June, and there it is right there. So every single one of our models, all of them that you want to put on the table, they're saying something. There's very high confidence in the model data at this point in time. So that's why we're at a 50 out of 100% chance we're going to get our first name storm down there in the Bay of Campeche. I don't think that this first one's going to make it. I really don't. We'll switch over to tropical tidbits just for the sake of being able to move quickly through an overlay. I'll move my head over to the right-hand side of the screen, and I'll show you why. And we'll switch out to our large-scale North America view, and we'll go to the upper-level dynamics at 250 millibars. So this is the 6Z run of the GFS, and there's our low pressure right there, this guy, the 1010 millibar low. First and foremost, we are embedded within what's left of our subtropical jet. So it does have jet support, which would mean we're not really fully characterized as a warm core barotropic vertically stacked tropical entity. Remember, guys, key takeaway, if you want to know if it's tropic or not, tropical, surface up. Non-tropical, top down. And in this case, we're getting a little bit of a mixture. Once it moves up and begins to interact with our polar front jet, which is running right in through here, that's when I think it's going to pick up jet support. So very, very, very tiny window from here to about there. Maybe 24 to 36 hours, a day or two at best, we're going to have for it to marinate over the Gulf Stream, try to organize and rapidly develop. If it does, we could see a named storm out of it, at the minimum a tropical depression or a subtropical style depression. But then immediately following that, look at how the trough right here, the jet max and the polar front jet really picks it up, scoots it on out, and by then it is extratropical. We have fronts on it. No longer an issue, a non-factor. Down there in the Caribbean, you look down there and you could see just large amounts of anticyclonic flow really helping to boost things. And right there, we also have a large anticyclone that could try to stimulate a little bit of the environment and get that secondary system that the Euro's picking up on the Bahamas to get going. Oh, and look at that. The GFS is picking up on a Cat 1 hurricane hitting the Florida Panhandle. Pay no attention to that. This is going to be our main area of interest right in through here. That makes a lot more sense with our pattern. But obviously, we still have to investigate if we're going to get secondary organization there or there before we start to look back further to the east in the MDR. We're not into MDR season just yet, but it is definitely worth highlighting. I just had in the back of my mind something that I wanted to show you guys before we wrap up the live stream, and I forgot. Enormous bummer. But, maybe my memory will be jogged, who knows, but that's more or less all I got for you guys. I mean, I know it's a lot. There's definitely a lot to pay attention to. We have multiple entities that could be on the immediate horizon. Looking at this one, the first wave, looking at the second one, looking at the possible very, very low end, maybe 5-10% chance of a third one, looking at a possible fourth area, and then we'll be moving our attention out there to the eastern Atlantic, the central and eastern MDR, to see if any of our waves out there can further organize. And that's all she wrote. Gosh, I had something else I wanted to show you guys, and I don't remember what it was. It was right there. Oh, that's right. I wanted to look at what the AI Euro is picking up on. So the AI Euro doesn't give it a huge vote of confidence either. The European AI does not think it'll develop. You see this up here on the screen. That bad boy is definitely frontal at that point. You can see the thickness lines building in back behind it. This already picked up jet support. So the European AI at 0Z does not think it'll develop into tropical. There goes the Bay of Campeche. Again, very, very good, consistent agreement that something is going to come up out of there at around the same general time frame. And then 0Z AI thinks something could try to come up and out, and then we have another frontal system that's going to come down that could maybe aggravate the pattern a little bit. We shall see. I know yesterday we saw a couple of interesting things on the AI Euro. We had a couple of model runs that indicated something going up towards the Gulf coastline, just as we had mentioned previously with the GFS. I believe it was the 12Z run that had something making a run for Florida. No, never mind, not the 12Z run. Maybe it was the 6Z. We had something out there in the Southern Caribbean that comes up. Yeah, there it goes. Running for Florida. So still back and forth. Still very back and forth. The main reason I like to look at the long-range European model is because we technically verified pretty well with what we have going on right now. If I go all the way back as far as I can to 0Z on Wednesday, this is 0Z last Wednesday. This is June 5th, and you go right up to where we sit right now, the 10th and the 11th. If you look, rain chances were definitely going up. The speed of the frontal system in the trough is what dorked everything up here. But you go to the 17th, and there it is. There goes that Bay of Campeche activity. So the European model, the artificial intelligence model, has been sniffing something out for a little bit of time now. You go to 0 at 6Z, or actually I should say 0Z on the 6th, and you fast forward to where we are now, June 12th. Let me go back. June 12th, we have painted the pattern. We've painted the picture of the pattern. The Peter Piper picked a pack of pepper, whatever you want to call it. The AI artificial intelligence model painted the picture of the pattern fairly decently. It was just the speed of the trough that dorked up the depiction here, but there's our huge swath of precip that's getting yanked up out of the Caribbean. You fast forward just a little bit more in time, and the artificial intelligence model right there picking up on our BOC development. So very, very good consistency there. It is definitely worth monitoring. This is probably pushing a little bit further to the northwest because of the timing. That's the thing right there, the timing. So if anything, it looks like one of the key takeaways, at least during these first couple of initial runs to where we can monitor the progression of actual systems, rainfall, energy, etc., this is worth using. One of the key takeaways I'd say we can look at is the AI model struggles a little bit with its synoptic timing. Seems like the Euro is back and forth a little bit in terms of when a trough's going to move in, when a high pressure or an upper ridge is going to build back in. But it's been consistently showing that BOC development down there for a while now. If you go to 0Z on, let's say, Saturday, there goes that first wave, there goes the second one, and then it pulls it back up. Not nearly as intense, but there's your wave right there. It gets washed out, turns into a giant gyre right around that same general time frame. So it's been hinting on something. You know, it looks like the big issue that the Euro AI faces is going to be timing. And I mean, that's with every model. But all in all, it isn't doing too bad for itself. This is 0Z on June 8th, and it picked up really well what's happening down there in Florida. If you look, this was yesterday, June 11th into June 12th. Developed a little bit on the latent side. This is the 13th. This is tonight. 0Z June 13th, which would equate to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, low pressure off the west coast of Florida. So it's just nailing down the timing. But all in all, the European model, this is June 8th. Today is June 12th. So we'll say about hypothetically 5 days ago, it started to whisper to us that we'll have to watch for some sort of an area of low pressure, really enhanced rainfall activity off the west coast and over the Florida Peninsula. So I would take that as a win. It is fairly decent. It's fairly decent in its mid to long range depiction. There you go again. This is 0Z on the 7th. This is definitely 5 days back. 5 days. Let me do the math in my head real quick. About 20 model runs ago, we were picking up on that. Low pressure, just the timing. The timing was a little off. You go back to 0Z on Tuesday, still very consistent. So Artificial Intelligence Euro is not doing too bad on itself. We'll just have to lean on other model platforms to adjust the timing for it. That seems to be the big discrepancy. The timing, and I guess you can say the intensity of our pressure systems around where we have to watch for development. And I guess I saw somebody in the chat mention that we can look at the CFS. I guess I'll pull up the CFS just for the heck of it. The CFS obviously has not been verifying. The CFS showed a couple things in late May, nothing happened. The CFS showed a couple things for very early June, nothing happened. So my trust in this is definitely diminished big time. But we'll look at it just for shoots and giggles. There goes our low pressure there. Hey, look at that. So the CFS is showing something in the Bay of Campeche. So that's, I guess, worth noting. Not picking up on too much elsewhere other than that. It's kind of trying to pick up on some MDR activity. Actually kind of shows our MDR really waking up as we go through the second half of June right there. So some stuff wandering out of the MDR. Our Central Atlantic high staying pretty consistent. Seeing some pretty good 2004 signals here though. Some big 2004 signals. There's your weak spot right there. So anything that comes up too far to the south is going to get pulled up like that. Anything that stays a little further to the north is going to get pulled up like that. So some 2004 energy being displayed on our CFS this morning. But yeah, guys, that's just about it. That's just about it. Lots of little incidental areas of interest to watch. Our number one focal point is going to be down there in the southwest Gulf of Mexico. I really do think that could be Alberto, unless something big changes. If everything changes all of a sudden, all of our models are going to suddenly drop off. ONW, thanks very much for joining us today. Temps here are extremely hot for this time of year. In May, we were getting temps that are normal for early July. Yes, I agree. Everybody was getting blasted by that subtropical heat wave, that death ridge, as some folks will coin it. But yeah, so, we can technically make a case that if it weren't for that trough, if it weren't for that cold front, Florida would be taking a hit by a tropical system right now. That's where all this rainfall is coming from. Just the upper level shear is, helping us out. The upper level shear from our trough is, the timing just wasn't quite there. It's a timing game. A lot of it is like a game of chess, to tell you the truth. Tropics are very, very much so like a game of chess. It depends on how you set up the puzzle pieces, or not the puzzle pieces, but if you set up the game board appropriately, you can work it in your favor. That being for our tropical systems out there. If your opponent, i.e. the upper levels, just don't line up, then, well, checkmate, and you're not going to get anything out of it. August will probably be our first named storm. Okay, now we're reaching. I feel like now we're hyping in the opposite direction here. I don't know about that. I really don't know about that. Like I said, unless you want to argue everything that we have out on the table, even National Hurricane Center at this point, giving it the 0-20 over the next 7 days, it seems like confidence is definitely there that the Bay of Campeche is going to execute, and we're going to get Alberto here as we get towards the second half of the month. And then it's very, very up in the air. What the heck is that advertisement in the top right-hand corner, guys? I hate what? I hate to completely derail the conversation, but what is that? What are you doing, Hulu? White men can't jump. What the heck? So random. Anyways, I just wanted to point that out. That's I don't know. I guess we can't jump. But anyways, yeah, so that's going to be, we'll go back and we'll round out everything on our National Hurricane Center homepage. This is going to be the one I really do think so. We'll have to watch this over the next couple of days. We'll have to see if National Hurricane Center starts to build up momentum on it. It seems like it. In fact, I'm surprised they didn't go a little bit higher than this. I think maybe they're just kind of backpedaling a little bit. They're trying to ease into it because we've had a couple of spots down there in the East Pac that seemed fairly confident, and then nothing happened. But then again, obviously, we didn't have the kind of agreement that we have now. Obviously, we had the Euro not spinning anything up. The Icon and the GFS were very back and forth. We only had a couple of Canadian model runs that developed something, so confidence was not nearly as fully agreed upon as that system in the BOC. I mean, you can't argue. We literally have 6 runs of the European model back to back to back to back to back. And the Euro is very, very heavily known for either being way too conservative and not manifesting anything or going very back and forth. 0Z will show something, 12Z won't. 0Z will show something, 12Z won't. It hasn't done that. 0 and 12, 0 and 12, 0 and 12. Ensembles are there. Probabilities are definitely there. Probabilities are through the roof. In fact, if you look right there, that's just about maxed out. In fact, I bet you 10 to 1 if we were to go to our tropical storm probabilities, they're just as high down there. Yeah, look at that. So tropical storm probabilities are at that 50 percentile. The tropical depression probabilities are almost to 100%. We can only get to 99.9% right there. You're sitting pretty at that 90%, 95 percentile. This one has a decent vote of confidence by the European model, but I really don't think it's going to execute. I really don't think it's going to execute. And I'm definitely not hyping. If you... I'm getting a little tired of that. I really am. I'm getting tired of that. I really am. And that's the only time I'm going to step out of the professional zone right now. I'm really getting tired of that. Gosh, like you have no idea how discouraging that is. And it's ridiculous too. It's ridiculous. The European model, run to run to run to run to run. Probabilities at almost 100%. Ensembles almost at 100%. Everything, even our UK, our NavGem, the JMA, the Korean model, all of them are saying, hey, tropical storm. You're hyping. I'm getting tired of that. Do you got, like, at this point, is this cancel culture? Should we just cancel the hurricane season? Just no hurricanes. You do realize that's a hurricane, right? Nope, that's a low pressure. That's a Bear Clinic low. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I saw a post on Paul Delgado's X yesterday that just it really resonates with me because I feel like that's what meteorology is turning into. Don't tell us what's happening until it's happening. So, and I commented, so you want me to stop doing my job then? Do you rather, because if that's the case, y'all can just go outside and see it. If you want tornado knocking on your door, I won't say anything. Just go outside and see for yourself. You want a tropical storm? Wait until it shows up, and then we can talk. That's not forecasting. So I'm low-key getting a little tired of seeing hype popping up in the chat. And the main reason I'm getting tired of it is because I am probably more realistic than I have ever been in my tenure here on YouTube and as a weather forecaster. There are times where, the GFS, the Icon, look, and I'm just sitting here, nope, not going to happen. In this case... But that's neither here nor there. I digress. Just slowly but surely getting a little on the exhausted side of hearing the H word. And I don't mean H-E double hockey sticks. I mean the other word. So, but that's just me. I see we lost a number of our concurrent viewers because of my hot-winded tirade. But I'm just going to tell you like it is. Anyways, that's all she wrote, guys. We're going to go ahead and start wrapping up the live stream. Still a number of things to talk about, a number of things to watch. We'll probably see you again on Friday, unless something else kicks off. If we continue to see an uptrend on whatever this is or anything in the MDR, or possibly a little bit of a signal down there in the Southern Caribbean, this is going to be our prime zone to watch, the BOC. Really don't think this is going to develop. This is going to end up taking on post-tropical characteristics. It's going to pick up fronts by our polar front jet. So, And April, I agree. I'm not letting a few people get me down. It's just the constant barrage. That's the thing. It's not a matter, you know how they say, all right, never mind. I can't think of the metaphor right now, but you know how too much of something becomes a bad thing, too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing. I can deal with every now and again, even though I don't know how you can argue with computer data. I'm not fabricating this in my basement, but every now and again it's okay to hear, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. It's like, you're going to have those folks, but it seems like every single live stream now, hype, 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 hype. I would recommend you go to other channels. And you know what? I'm going to put them on blast. I'm just going to say it. If you want hype, if you want to really get after somebody, go over to Direct Weather. Period. Go over to Direct Weather. And I feel so bad name dropping, but it's true. If you want hype, if you want sensationalism, if you want things being silly, then go to somewhere else. But I'm not about that business. I take things very serious on this channel, and I love the people I talk to on a day-to-day. So the last thing I'm going to do is lie to you guys. That's another thing, too. So, could possibly cause problems along the East Coast. I really don't think so, though, because we're just going to be too far off the coast. I think we're going to be too far off the coast to really do a whole lot. Could see some residual impacts once it begins to merge with our fronts down at the surface and the trough in the upper levels, but other than that, I'm not too sure we're going to see anything. Atlantic Canada, East Canada, is definitely going to have to pay attention to it because you can see a lot of really good ensemble convergence moving up in that direction. This is the hot spot. That's definitely going to be the hot spot here very soon. And then down here, we'll just continue to watch the trends. If I had to break it down to you guys, I'll even use ink. This here, the red, is the hot spot for sure. I'll use yellow here just because this is an area to watch. And then I'll go ahead and use green because this here is just an area of speculation that popped up on the Euro. Could possibly be a rogue run. It could be gone at 12 Zulu. And then down here I'll put in the green as well that we'll just have to watch for any kind of increasing activity or increasing signs that the MDR could try to do something. Last year, towards the back end of June, we had Brett and Cindy down there, and we had El Nino to stop them before moving into the Caribbean. We'll have to see if we get a rerun of that. We have some very robust waves down there. So if I had to categorize it, this would be number 1 here, number 2, and then we'll kind of do a close third here. And then put a question mark down there in the Southern Caribbean. That would be how I'd rack and stack today's live stream, because I know we covered a lot and we talked about quite a bit. Rainfall is going to continue here for central and southern Florida for the next 3 to 4 days before we get another push of moisture down there from the south. And, yeah, that's all she wrote, guys. Does anyone have any main questions, any big questions in the chat that I can address? I know, Brooke, I'm sorry you missed it. Nova Viper Dragon, I only watch you and Ryan as you don't hype and give real results. Thank you very much for that. Sassy, thanks for joining us. Good to see you here on the YouTube channel. I've seen you on Instagram quite a bit, but thank you very much for tuning in on YouTube today. True, that channel has been crazy, but great job, Nazari. You're doing well. One Nation Weather, thank you very much kindly for jumping in here, bro. I appreciate that for sure. Naz, do you know anything about arrowheads? I do not. I've only ever kind of seen them in passing. I replaced with Weather Center. I appreciate that. Thank you. Tired of you having to defend yourself? This is the only channel I watch now because if people want to hear loud, overblown hype, I can direct them to other hype channels. It made me shake my head. Yeah, you know, April, to tell you the truth, even last year, I characterized last hurricane season as the hype season. Last hurricane season, I even fell into it. I openly admit that I hyped last year. Last year, I definitely did. I was going crazy with Hurricane Lee as it moved up the East Coast. I was definitely going crazy with, actually, no, Lee was probably the only one. Because I kept on trying to tell people that Rena, Sean, Philippe, all of them are not going to do much, and they really didn't do a whole lot. I remember we were fighting tooth and nail all the other sources out there who kept saying that Vince was going to form in the Caribbean. That didn't show up. And we nailed Adalia. I pinned her up on the wall 2 weeks out. I was like, hey, Ice Storm, it's coming, and there it is. And that's what started this channel. So I would like to think, humbly, we are doing okay for ourselves. And, you know, I'll admit, I'll give Eric Burris credit, because if I'm not mistaken, it was right around this time that he used the Lazak's recurring cycle and kind of identified that something may try to come on the west coast of Florida, and here we are. I have to look back and see if the dates line up, but, nah, you way overhyped. Oh, well, yeah, I see. I can pick up the sarcasm there, Mick and Marley. I can pick up that sarcasm. Those were good times. That's where a lot of our insiders came from on this channel. And yes, I'm ready for Isaac. I'm going to watch Colin this year too. If this is going to be an 04-esque kind of season, Florida may have to pay close attention to the sea storm. But we'll see. If we get active in June, we might get the sea storm out of the way early, which means that's a good sign for Florida. But, all right, guys, if nobody has any major question... Oh, Chandler, what is making that storm in the BOC turn west? Yes, to answer your question, we'll use this same AOI and we'll go up in the upper levels. We'll go back to the European ensembles and we'll take a look at the tropical Atlantic and we'll do... let's do our 500 millibar height anomalies and I'll show you. So right about here... If you look, if you can imagine the wind flow around this, we have a giant ridge. This is why the heat wave is coming back in a couple days. We have a giant ridge over the eastern half of the United States. There's the trough that picks up 90L now over the northern Atlantic. And then there's our area of interest down there in the Bay of Campeche. So if you imagine all that mid to upper level steering flow, it's coming in out of the east at this point. So as that ridge rotates and we build in just kind of like a big dome, a big anticyclonic dome there, it's going to push it right in. It's going to give it that little nudge into Mexico. Haven't worked that in a live stream in a while. We had to throw it in. That anticyclone, as that really intensifies and becomes almost like a mid-amplitude blocking pattern over the eastern U.S., it's going to give it that extra little westward nudge and push it into Mexico. That's why, we'll still have to continue to keep an eye on this, because if this ridge wiggles and wobbles, because you can see it broadens out. That's been the general trend here. It broadens out, and as that broadens out, it's going to create even more of a westerly fetch to anything that may try to get going down here. That's another reason why the European model probably has that weak system crossing over Florida, whether it be just an area of rainfall or something tropical trying to get going. We'll have to watch the mid-amplitude ridge over the East Coast, because if that thing stays sharp a little bit longer, see this? If it stays a little sharper, a little bit longer in its amplitude, that'll drive it up towards Texas. If it does eventually broaden out and the timing is right in terms of when this feature begins to show itself, then it'll crash and burn into Mexico and bring them heavy rainfall, some elevated coastal winds, storm surge before dying and becoming a flood threat as it runs over top the mountains. So this ridge here is going to be the main denominator, the common denominator across our tropical equation for all intents and purposes. Then it gets a little spooky, because from here on out, if you guys look, we have just a ton of ridging out there, just ridging everywhere. No more troughs. So if anything does decide to do this, or if we get anything in the MDR, they're coming this way. So that's when things can get a little iffy as we get towards the last week and a half, 2 weeks of June. So that's why I mentioned we'll have to kind of just keep an eye open. Keep 2 eyes on that Bay of Campeche system. We're keeping 1 eye open on that system as it moves off the coast of Florida. Even if it does develop, okay, that's great. It's not going to affect anybody, so that's cool. And then we're watching what happens at 12 Zulu with that thing that suddenly popped up on the Euro for the Bahamas and Florida. And then if anything in the MDR begins to signal that, something may try to organize. Bermuda High, I think, is going to stay present. I think the Bermuda High is going to, if I had to give you a preliminary guess, I'd say the Bermuda High is going to stay around and do something along this line, right there. So we are going to have an escape route along its western extent. I can see some out-to-sea storms moving up like this, but then there are also going to be some kickers that make it in like so. I think this area is going to be the prime area that needs to watch. I'm not saying impacts. I'm saying just needs to watch. Greater Antilles, Lesser Antilles, and the eastern seaboard of the United States, and anything that does develop in the Caribbean is going to open up the gates for the Texas and Louisiana Gulf Coasts to have to watch as well. But that remains to be seen, guys. We got to go ahead and get ready to end the live stream. I got 30 minutes before I have to start work. I got to finish up. I got to get cleaned up. I came home from the gym and immediately jumped on here. That is another issue with other channels. They are so overcomplicated that you're scratching your head. But circles, lines, and loud voices, and you just click out. This channel is easy to understand. Thank you, April. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that, because that was, I think, one of my biggest flaws that I had, not only with briefing military personnel who weren't weather, being a little too sophisticated in the words that I used, But that was also an issue that I ran into that a number of people called me out on when I started the channel last year. They say, just stick to the basics. You're getting a little too intense with the science. And that's just the love I have for meteorology. I want to teach you guys at the same time. I know I can get a little too excited and start getting really into, the variables of this and the intricacies of this and the divergence and the quadrants, all that good jazz. But I'm trying to tone it down and just kind of make sense of the picture and get you guys the information while still educating a little bit. And yeah, April, I'll tell you the truth. If you see me jumping like, oh yeah, here we go, guys, then you know that something big's going to happen. But yeah, guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great Wednesday. We're already halfway through the week. We're just about halfway through June already. So crazy. Time is just, as Reed Timmer would say, time is ripping right now. We are moving. Can't believe it's already been 7 months since our first storm chase on the channel back in December. 6+ months since the storm chase we did up in the Panhandle. Time is moving, guys. It is crazy. It's scary almost. This is why a lot of the other channels like Eric Burris, Mark Sudduth, Hurricane Track, who else out there? Just Weather. A lot of the really good reputable channels out there, a lot of the folks who have been talking tropics for a while, they continue to emphasize that we have to be prepared. I know it sounds fun in games, saying that in April or March, hurricane season's still ways away, but now we're already almost halfway through June. And for the viewers out there who may come across this page or may come across this video later on, I'll leave you with this. It was all fun and games to make fun of us when we were talking about preparedness in winter. But now, for those of you out there who still want to push it to the back burner and say that August, September is when the real hurricane season starts, well, that clock is ticking. The clock is ticking. We are no longer ahead of the game. We are inside the hurricane season, and we are now well within the hurricane season. It is June 12th, which means we have approximately 45 days and counting before we reach that uphill climb that we see on the charts. August, September, and then October, we start to come back down. So now your time is really running out. If you wanted to ignore us, June, nothing happens. July, nothing happens. Your clock has officially started ticking, and that fuse is burning. Because if you want to only pay attention during August, September, well, we're already halfway through June, so you got to pick up the pace a little bit. But going to try to enjoy it with the rain as a teacher and taking half the summer off, and it's not the greatest start with all the rain. I understand that, Brooke, completely. Thank you so much, Naz. What would I do without you? I'm currently learning atmospheric science, meteorology, and mathematics. I didn't think I could find a channel like you. Thank you for everything. Freezing. I sincerely appreciate that. I know I read that like a freaking auctioneer, but it means a lot. I thrive off of those comments, guys, because it can be very tough doing this job, working all the other jobs that I have in the background, military, weather, schooling, actual work, my workouts, my personal life, but you guys are the reason I keep coming back in and keep doing this day to day and trying to get even better. So that way the next live stream is that much more quality than the previous. But thank you all for the inspiration. Thank you all for being such a gracious audience. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish you the fondest of hump days, and we'll talk to you again soon. Again, if anything pops up over the next 36 hours, we'll go live again tonight, or we'll go live tomorrow. Remains to be seen. Don't quote me on that. If anything, we'll see you back again Friday. Friday, we'll probably do an evening live stream, not only for old time's sake, but I have plans to work out with an old coworker, an old personal trainer of mine in the morning, and I don't want to rush hour workout. So if anything, plan for an evening live stream on Friday night, guys. We'll talk some tropics, see exactly what's manifested and what's evolved, and we'll take it day by day. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful and safe rest of your Wednesday and a good rest of the week if I don't see you guys. And until next time, this is Weather Center Nazario signing out.